So the oil industry waits and worries until all the pumps return to service. John Hendren, Al Jazeera, Chicago.
So despite OPEC's record production cut, oil prices have fallen further. Has the oil cartel lost its ability to manage prices? Let's ask Rajat Kapoor. He's an oil analyst and managing director of oil and gas at AWR Lloyd. We appreciate your time very much, Rajat. So what about that? What role can or should OPEC have been playing in this? I mean, how much power do they really have right now? What is their influence?
When you talk about the OPEC from the producer side, whilst they do have considerable amount of clout, you've got to realize that ultimately the market has to be balanced by primarily the consumers and the producers. But what we're largely seeing, and what was reflective of the negative prices on the 20th at the WTI, was more a factor of the constraint in the supply chain, in the storage infrastructure. So OPEC has agreed, as you've said, OPEC++, which includes Russia and other countries, including Mexico, have agreed for a price cut up to 9.7 million barrels of crude a day. But on the demand side of things, we are seeing that there is a drop in demand, which is much more. At times, by some analysts, IEA says that the demand drop for crude for the month of April is going to be 30 million barrels of crude a day. Now, you juxtapose that against a drop or a cut of 10 million barrels or thereabouts, that's not much. You still have a huge supply cut that remains, which does not find its way, or which cannot find its way to consumers, because that market has suddenly evaporated.
So what we're seeing with everything that has fallen off the cliff, basically with WTI, do you think that's also going to happen with Brent, which is the international benchmark? I mean, you're talking about this oversupply is a problem that everybody is having. So what do you think is going to happen with Brent prices?
WTI fall in 20th was, as you've said, an anomaly. Minus $37 per barrel was to do because the crude futures for May had to be closed off, had to be squared off on May 20th, and there was no place in Cushing, Oklahoma to take those additional barrels. That is a peculiarity of WTI, where the crude has to be stored only in one place, Cushing, Oklahoma. Brent that way has a little bit more leeway, because physical storage of Brent can take place not just in one location, but on various locations. Coming back to your point, would Brent follow or would fall off the cliff as WTI has? I think the answer to that is a general slowdown in all other countries, the world in general. IMF came out with some numbers. For 2020, they're expecting the world to contract at 3% per annum. That means last year it was a 3% growth. This year, they're looking at a 3% contraction.
What is the relationship between OPEC and what do they care about what's happening with the shale industry in the U.S.?
But I think they're directly linked, because in a very real world, both of them are producing crude and at different stages in life are competing for the consumer refineries. Now, as we know, the cost of producing crude in the US, especially in the shale patch, is much higher than the cost of producing crude in any of the APEC consumer countries. So when crude falls off the cliff, today we are looking at about $20 per barrel of Brent crude, which has fallen down from near about $68 per barrel start of this year. Whilst this is going to bleed the producer countries in the OPEC, it is also going to bleed the shale oil patch in North America, not just the US, but Canada as well, because their cost of producing crude on a per barrel basis is much higher. Now, whether they'll be able to survive the storm, it looks very difficult, because we've already seen shale companies, and I was just hearing you a few minutes back where you spoke about companies going into Chapter 11 bankruptcy. And we will see more of this happening, because at least for this year, the improvement in crude prices will not be that dramatic. We're all hoping that it does not bottom out, that it does not go below the current levels of 22 barrels, and it will increase. But how much of an increase will it be? That remains to be seen. To kind of end with the point, the biggest sufferers there would be the North American unconventional producers, whose cost of production is much higher than the rest of the world.
All right. Oil and gas analyst at AWR Lloyd, Rajat Kapoor. Rajat, thank you very much.
Thank you.